Welcome to the Inspiring Good podcast. This podcast is brought to you by the Community Foundation of Elkhart County, which serves a vibrant community in northern Indiana, known for its generosity and strong network of nonprofit organizations. I'm Marshall King, who's hosting this podcast with Kevin Deary, a former nonprofit CEO who now coaches others. Our guests today, and we have two, are Darrell Peterson, who's been executive director of Lifeline and is retiring soon. Welcome, Darrell.
Thank you.
And David Gaona, who is taking over as the leader of the youth serving organization. Welcome, David.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Gentlemen, it is so good to have you here on our podcast today. Both of us go way back. Darrell, you and I go back for many years, and it's been a privilege to work in the youth development work with you. And I retired 2 or 3 years ago, and now it's your turn.
Right.
And isn't it nice to see that we've got people coming up behind us that are the next generation, that are, frankly, more technical than us, smarter than us. They're not taller than us, but they are the next generation of leaders. And
it's wonderful to see.
And tell me, before we get started, not everybody who's listening to the podcast today knows about Lifeline. So I'm going to throw it to you, David. Talk a little bit about what is Lifeline, David?
Yeah, so Lifeline, first of all, Lifeline has been in Elkhart since 1963. So that's over 60 years, started by a man that needs no introduction, Irv Polk, right? And we focus on after-school programs. We're heavily involved in the school system with Elkhart Community Schools, Premier Arts Academy, Concord. And we pick up students and bring them to our building, and it's a safe place for students to be. But outside of our after-school programs, we have vocational training as well, where we teach high school students construction skills and also in the apparel business. And I can keep talking more, but man, we would be here all day of all the things that Lifeline does.
And you mentioned Irv Polk. You know, I arrived in Indiana in early 1994, and Irv's one of the greatest Christian men I've ever met, and just such a gentleman. His passion for kids was like nothing I've ever seen. It's the only man I know who answered a thank you note with a thank you note, and he wrote more thank you notes, handwritten in a beautiful handwriting. And I so remember because we would go into detention center and work with kids together, pray with kids together, and we worked together with Boys and Girls Clubs and Lifeline. And I learned. I was only 32 years old. I was just a young man, and I learned a lot from him.
Yeah.
Darrell, what's Lifeline? What's it meant to you?
When I came, I really didn't know what to expect. And in a very short period of time, the relationships that I built with our students there was so deep. And that's one of the main things that we talk about at Lifeline is relationships. But here I sit 17 years later, and I still get calls talking about the great times that we had, and David just mentioned Irv. He brought me into his office almost every day that I was there. Our time only overlapped about 6 months. And he was dying of pancreatic cancer, but he loved it. And one thing is that when we walked into Lifeline, he had a 4x8 sheet of plywood that he had painted. Through these doors walk the greatest kids of Elkhart. If you walk into our new building, it says that now. But I saw a man who was so passionate. And one of the neat things that he did too is, because it's hard work, and he would point to a filing cabinet almost every time I was in his office. And I thought, why does he keep talking about that filing cabinet? Because there were letters in there from students who, long after they left Lifeline, started making good decisions, got their heart right. And he wanted me to know that you do your best, and that's all you can do. I went to visit him in the hospital the night before he died. Obviously, I didn't know that was the case. And he grabbed my forearm, and he pulled me in, and he just kind of whispered, "Don't let it die. Don't let it die." And I tell you, that's powerful. And I think every dessert night, that's one of the things I start with too, is just honoring him. And he's honored through our building, but it has been an amazing 17 years. The relationships that I have with kids, it's just phenomenal.
Yeah, he was definitely a special man. In 2012, you had a fire.
Yes.
Tell me about that.
I woke up and noticed that I had a message on my phone, and someone had said, "Hey, your building's on fire." So I went down to State Street, and the building was gone. I mean, the roof had collapsed. The fire department told me that they had poured 1 million gallons of water into that fire. Because if you remember, there was 2 other buildings that caught fire, and there was people in one of the other buildings. So rightly so, the firemen were far more concerned of that one house. And I remember sitting there and thinking, what in the world are we going to do? And at that time, I was actually helping the Y out as well. The most amazing thing about this community, and Kevin, you were a part of that with Boys and Girls Club, is everybody reaching out, and Monday we still had clubs, which is pretty amazing, how everybody rallied around us. And we just continued to grow and continued to move on, but it was shocking. I will say hindsight being 2020 is the greatest thing that happened to Lifeline. Because at that time, one of the places we went was Mary Beck Elementary School. And then the principal there went to Roosevelt, and then we're at Roosevelt, and before we knew it, we're at 5 different elementary schools in Elkhart.
I remember that time. I remember coming over and being on State Street and visiting with you, but I remember the children, teens especially, coming over, and they were devastated. That was like a home to them.
Absolutely. It's a place where it was safe and unconditional love.
But you guys moved so quickly, and they had a place. And what the kids quickly realized was, yeah, the place was important to us, but it's the people in our lives that really matter.
Absolutely.
And as long as they had you guys, then it really didn't matter what roof was over their house, over their head. So, but you rebuilt and you replanned.
It was 13 years, 13 locations. It was at times heartbreaking. There were times that I would go to the south side, different areas, and pray that God would give us the south side, give us an opportunity to really reach the south side. And I can remember praying too, God, why aren't you giving us a building? Is it me? And I remember speaking that openly at one point, and someone said, look at all the things that have happened in that time frame. The relationship that you have with Elkhart Community Schools by being in so many schools. We started an internship program, which now has just exploded. I think David and I talked the other day that we had over 350, over 350 interns since we started our internship program. So we become a teaching facility, but all of that was brought about in that waiting period.
When I was at the Elkhart Truth, I remember interviewing Irv or going to talk to Irv, and there was this, in the newsroom, it's like, oh, you're going to talk to Irv. He's, he was just known throughout the community as this amazing man. But Darrell, I remember after the fire being out on the street talking to you. I was a newspaper editor, reporter, and came out, and we were talking and with the people next door and what happened. And then there's the whole, how did this all happen? But the grief was palpable that this place had gone away. But it was also a place that in many ways was so tied to Irv's legacy. And so for that to get reimagined in some ways, changed the organization, and you led it through that to what it is now. I don't know if this is the right transition, but tell us, David, on a daily basis, Darrell or David, what is happening at the building you have now called the Hub?
Yeah, I can summarize it in 2 words: intentional relationships. from the moment our students get off the bus, there is a leader greeting them at the door, opening the door for them, smiling at them, giving them high fives, calling them by name. And every kid, right away, they know that they are loved, they are seen, and they're known by name. What an incredible thing, right? That somebody knows you by name. And as soon as they walk in through the doors, that's what these students are feeling and getting. And there's an excitement. Man, we're excited that you are here. If you were to walk around our building, you'll see laughter, joy. Our leaders are so intentional and not just watching the kids, but playing with the kids. And that's powerful. We pride ourselves in not being babysitters, but we want to build relationships. So you'll see our leaders playing the gym games with the kids. You'll see our leaders playing board games, building Legos, but also having sometimes hard conversations. But you can see the love in those conversations. There's times where we have to maybe suspend a student for a few days. And that is so hard. And you see how our leaders have such a hard time even saying, hey, you have to miss a few days. And we have literally seen leaders hug the students like, man, I really don't want to do this, but we have to. And so that's what you will see, just a lot of intentionality. And for me, when I walk around and I see that, it really does feel like I'm in a miracle. Yeah. And I ask myself, man, God, why do I get to do this? I get to do this as a living. What a privilege that is, and I tell our leaders, like, we get to play with kids, as a job. What an amazing thing that is.
I think one other thing too is we're very intentional for the number of students that we have in the building. We try to keep our ratio to 10 to 1. And the reason for that is so that we can develop the relationships. It's incredibly unfortunate that we have to turn kids away. Our summer camp, we did 240 this year. We're going to try to do 300 this next summer. That's a huge amount of kids. And we want to bring quality people in. We have the summer internship program through our internship growing. But we want to bring quality people in to build those quality relationships. Another interesting thing is how many middle schoolers and high schoolers we have in our building after school, and how many of those have been with us since elementary school.
Yeah. Since, so when I started at Lifeline, my first group of students that I have just graduated this past year. So I saw these students all the way from elementary to high school. And to me, that's a win for me. Those are things that nobody can take away from me. And what a privilege that is.
And now those students become junior camp counselors. So they're in leadership positions working with our elementary program.
And you actually started in 2016 as paid staff.
I was an intern.
Intern, okay.
Yes.
Intern.
Yeah, I was working part-time at that time. And and then slowly...
But you had been a Lifeline kid too, hadn't you?
No, I wasn't, no.
So you grew up in Elkhart.
Yes.
And yet had not had the opportunity to go to Lifeline. But somehow you fell into Lifeline. Tell me how that happened.
Yeah, so that's again, when we look at this story, all you can see is God. You see God and how He moves things, and He's just so sovereign over our lives. But when I was in Bible college in upstate New York, I was there for 2 years, and God had really burdened me for the youth in Elkhart. And during that time, He would tell me, "Hey, go into the schools. Hey, go minister to these youth in Elkhart." And I was wrestling with God because I said, "God, how am I supposed to do this? How am I supposed to just go into a school and say, hey, I want to mentor kids?" And it was a couple months before my end of my time at the Bible Institute, and I was working at their summer camp. And it just so happened that Darrell's dad worked at this Bible Institute. And Darrell grew up in that town where this Bible Institute was at. And he grew up going to those camps that I was working at. And now as the executive director, Darrell would take students, Lifeline students, up to this summer camp. And it just so happened to be that I was in charge of a unit of counselors, and my unit ended up being responsible for those Lifeline students. And through some circumstances, Darrell and I met, and we started talking. And he started telling me the things that Lifeline does. He's like, "Oh yeah, we mentor students in Elkhart. We go into the schools. We have after-school programs, literally to the details. The things that God had been telling me to do was exactly what Lifeline was, and that's an incredible, just God."
So at some point there was a romance that was part of this.
It happened long afterwards. Actually.
Well, so talk because we didn't lead with this on the podcast, but Darrell, you're now the father-in-law of David. Like, he is married to your daughter. So how did that come into play here?
Well, two things. The interesting thing too about the story of Word of Life Island was there was a young man that I had to say, if you walk off this blacktop, I'll physically pick you up and bring you back. I've never raised my voice to a Lifeline kid, but he knew I was serious. That student, child, is now at Lifeline.
Yes.
So that's an interesting thing. When David first came, he and Emily were working together at Hawthorne, and they, to put it mildly, did not enjoy each other. They didn't like each other at all. And I can remember saying, you guys need to look at each other's giftedness and talents and realize that you guys could make a good team here at Hawthorne. And so it didn't start off as a romance. It started off almost exactly opposite. But I'll let David pick up from here.
Yeah, just a few years later, we had some tragedies at Lifeline that really bonded the staff together. And we had to be there for one another during that time. And just through that, Emily and I just developed a friendship. And that's where it all started, just as friends, where we would get some of the other Lifeline employees, and we would hang out after our clubs would end. So after clubs would end, all of us would go to Emily's house, and Emily would feed us, and we would watch shows together, and we would just do a lot of different activities together. During that time, just feelings started developing, and one thing led to another. The kids would notice it, and the kids, they were catching on to it because we were bickering, right? But really, we were flirting. And the kids would say, "Oh, you guys like each other," and we both would say, "We will never marry each other." And then finally, when we did start dating, everyone around us said, "We knew it. We knew you guys were going to start dating." And the kids were the funny thing is the kids were also saying, "We knew this was going to happen."
And David, in a very respectful way, came to talk to me at my house and asked me if he could date Emily. And I remember saying to him, if this works out, you will have the greatest mate that you could possibly imagine for what you want to do. Emily was a senior when I went to Lifeline, and she was very heavily involved. But she is all about ministering to people. Even right now, on a Tuesday night, she has the entire staff over for dinner. And even as the staff has grown to the high 20s now, she still loves doing that and gets energy from that. And I said to David just the other day, as many times as you can get her in to do something here in the office, she helped us with the Christmas store. It just energizes her. Yeah. And you can drop your daughter off at our house anytime to make that happen. So it is a great team. I mean, my wife, the things that we were able to do, the kids that we had at the house almost every day during the summer. So Emily was taught by a master.
Yeah. Interesting side note. I worked at Lifeline. I attended Lifeline. I was in Scroon Lake growing up. Darrell and I were in the same rooms in the early 70s.
Word of Life.
Word of Life. Yeah. Didn't even know each other. And we had gone to snow camp. I worked at the island. We'd been in basketball marathons. And who would have guessed that God would have put us in the same county working with youth in two different ministries. So just an amazing story right there. But your story is amazing as far as not only how you two met and how you ended up in Elkhart County, but you're the next generation of leadership. And that must be invigorating, exciting. Must also be a little terrifying.
Yeah, I mean, I look at it as just what an opportunity, right? I told Darrell I could have been the elementary director for the rest of my life because I just love doing that job. But when Darrell approached me about the executive director role, Emily and I really took time to pray about it. And we felt that the Lord was leading me to that. But I don't need to be the executive director. I just want to serve kids, But in that, I feel like it's such a great opportunity. And the plan that we developed and we have executed has been so key to this transition being so smooth. And just, I have so many people around me that are pouring into me. And yeah, it has just been an incredible journey. Yes, it has been. There have been moments of fear, but because of all the people that have been put around me and have been developing me, I really do feel ready because of that.
Well, let's talk about that transition, because I know when I had given a year notice, and I had been in Boys and Girl Scouts for 40 years total, 30 as CEO. And I remember as time was getting near, my emotions, it was hard to keep them in check because I was walking away from something that I had built, something that I loved, something that was really, really important. Even though I was transitioning it to somebody who is doing an amazing job, I still went through a lot of emotional ups and downs. And Darrell, maybe you could talk a little bit about that, since I'm sure you're feeling some of that.
I think much less than you would think. And I think there's a couple reasons. Because we'd worked together for 10 years and really created a great team, because David's skill set's different than mine. And I think that's important to notice too, because God was able to use me to get Lifeline where it is. But David's talents is perfect for where we're heading. When I first approached David, and this is always emotional for me, when I asked him if he would be interested in doing it, actually, it was even before that, I said to him, "What's your game plan?" And he said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, you're a gifted speaker. You've spoke at church. Is that a direction, or is Lifeline your direction?" And he said, when I was in college, and he just shared it earlier, I prayed all the time that God would send me to the south side of Elkhart to be the man I needed growing up. That comment meant the world to me, because often not-for-profits will bring in somebody who's competent but not passionate. And for Lifeline to have somebody who is competent and passionate, at 10 years of experience, knows the staff. I mean, you checking off a lot of boxes. When we decided to do it and picked a time, David did ask me if I would stay on to help with the vocational education, the apparel shop that we have, and the construction team. And I said, I'd love to. I would want to serve you in any way that I possibly can. And I guess it was about 2 months ago, he said, what would you think about leadership development here? And you know what, Kevin, you know me, and to be able to pour into our staff means everything to me. And I'm just excited about it. But, I have no desire to make decisions. I've said that to David. My wife said, "What are you going to do if David does something that you don't think you should?" And I said, "He does that now." I mean, there are times our staff comes and says, "What do you think about this?" And I might say, "I don't know if I would do it," or I'm not sure if I would do it that way. But being a macro manager, it's like, if you feel that this is what we need to do, go ahead and do it. And I've been pleasantly surprised on a number of occasions. So there's a great deal of confidence in David and the staff. So I man, I just feel so fortunate to be able to have a role, and that role is really doing what I love to do, and that's pouring into people.
Are you going to take some time maybe to go away after you retire just for a little bit?
I love golf. So Leslie and I are leaving. I think April 1st is that day, and April 11th I was able to get a place for a week south of here. And then Leslie and I go away for 3 weeks in February. But what's interesting, too, into that is Andy Murray asked the other day in our succession plan. So we have a succession team that meets. And he said to me, where are we? Because January 1st is really the soft start. How close are we to that? And I looked at David and we smiled and said, he's basically there. For the last year, I have said to him, I will make no decision that affects April 2nd without you being involved. When we go to Word of Life and we were asked to speak at one of the sessions, I had David do it, making sure that everybody knows that David is the future. So I look at it and I'm so excited. I really am excited. I'm excited because I get to spend time with the staff. I'm excited because I get to spend more time with my grandkids. My wife and I'm going to play a heck of a lot of golf this summer.
Good for you.
But you are going to have a role at Lifeline. Like this, you're not completely going away. Tell us about what you're going to be doing, because you've been good at marketing, and now a marketing role is going to be part of what you're going to be doing.
Yeah. It's interesting you would say that too, because I don't ask people for money. Pete would use me as an example of what not to do. But I said, we had a strategic planning follow-up meeting last week, and I said to Mike Reddy, who was doing it, I think I'm going to have an easier time asking for money in the future because I'm saying, David needs your help. And I said, that may make no sense to people because I'm not asking for myself. And Mike was like, no, that makes sense to me. And I was one who said, hey, let's do Mission 100. So for me to be in a role of promoting the staff and what the staff is accomplishing, that will be much easier in the future. So I'm looking for that. And then doing the apparel, that was something that I wanted to do from years ago. And in our first year, to do $250,000 in sales blew my mind. And the construction team not long ago built 3 duplexes from the ground up for La Casa. So to expand those things as well is great. And we're teaching high school kids. Our staff is getting certified as teachers. So it's like going to the Career Center.
I think one of the things I was so impressed with Lifeline being ahead of the curve of a lot of the other nonprofits. So many of us could find quality staff, but they lived far away, but they couldn't find a place to live. That was a constant problem for us in Elkhart County. No matter what town it was finding a place to live that was affordable. And because if the employees don't have a place to live, that's hard to have a base. Mm-hmm. But you guys came up with this revolutionary idea that I was so impressed with. Why don't you talk a little bit about how those houses happened?
Well, if you remember, the State Street was not really the place to be a while back, and there was a duplex across the street, a brick duplex, and drugs and prostitution. And we could see from our office all the different things that were going on. It came up for sale. And I was talking to our board, and it wasn't met real warmly, so we lost it. So then it came up for sale again, and by that time our board was understanding that, if we can bring people in for the summer, then we can really do a lot more. If we can do one-year internships, we can do a lot more. So when it came up for sale the second time, the guy wanted a pretty decent amount for it, and I said to him, I know what you paid for it, and I know why you're selling it because I see it every day. I'll give you what you paid for it. And he took it in a heartbeat. And it was actually Craig Fulmer, who I went to and I said, "Can you talk me out of this? Because this is a crazy idea." And he said, "I'm going to talk to Connie, but this is something I think we want to be a part of." And I said, again, not being a good fundraiser, I said, "I didn't come here for money. I came here for advice." And he said, "Well, if I'm going to give you money, that means I think it's a decent idea." And that's how it started. And then all of a sudden it exploded, and we went and got another duplex, and then we remodeled 2 quadplexes and a triplex. And actually, David and I talked last week that as we continue to grow, there's an empty lot that we own, and it might be time to look at building something new, because we're actually talking to 2 couples right now who are getting married, who are rock stars, who they both want to work for Lifeline. And but having the house, as you said, people can drop everything and move here. I'm going to Word of Life, Florida in January, and we're putting a new banner up. And the banner says real big, free housing, it's paid internship, free housing, lives transformed. And there have been so many times where someone says free housing and how easy it is for them to move here. So it's been a huge game changer.
And just brings in quality people at the best time because they're ready to launch their careers, and we're better than here in Lifeline than to do that.
Right. So we look at ourselves now as a sending organization. We lost an employee just the other day, and I said to him, and one of the board members said, we have to look at those as graduations because they've come here, they've cut their teeth in youth ministry, we've been able to teach them, and we literally have former interns in South America and all over the United States who cut their teeth at Lifeline.
Yeah. You have a wonderful board. You mentioned about your succession plan, and you've done a great job of building and maintaining a strong board of directors that can be strategic, and you've always provided vision, like the housing and this beautiful facility the community has given you, and that you offered up to another nonprofit to move in to help them get started. You just continue to be the leaders in the youth development space, but this board of directors is very, very unique, and the fact that they have been so helpful in this transition. What were some of the bumps along the way?
I don't know how many. I would say even in the last 2 years, there was one hiccup. And, when David and I were talking yesterday about this podcast, honesty was the main thing. We always speak honest with each other. There's something that I learned years ago, OIC. We observe, we interpret. The C is not conclusion. The C is asking for clarification. So, and even through that little hiccup over a year ago, that's what got us through it, to say, okay, here's what I'm seeing. Help me with this. Help me with this. And I would say there's an enormous amount of trust and honesty. And I'll let David chime in here, but when Andy Murray said to me, "I'm retiring, what's one thing you can do for me?" I said, "Start meeting with David periodically." And he has met with David for, like 2 years, every other week. And Kevin, in talking with David, you've been a big part of that as well. So I think that's really super key, that he's not just getting information from one person. He has a number of people in his life, as you mentioned earlier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think a lot of people, as much as you pour into kids, a lot of successful business people are pouring into you. Mm-hmm. That had to have been helpful for you, but also a little daunting. Mm-hmm. Figuring out, how do I take all this in, and then deploy it back out into the mission. Mm-hmm. So let me talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think I always I'm open ears to all these giants, in my life, and in terms of these are everyone that is pouring into me in their sector of business or not-for-profit. They're the top, and it's incredible that God has provided that for me. And so it's so nice to be able to have those people. It's so nice to be able to, even for you, Kevin, to be able to come to you and just ask you on how to process a few things. Mm-hmm.
Tell me, what's Lifeline going to look like 10 years from now under your leadership?
Yeah, I think you will always see that we are Jesus-centered. You know, that is something that is never going to change, and always finding new ways on how we can minister to youth. So if you look at everything that we do, whether it be the vocational, after school, our JDC program, all of those are just part of our mission statement, reaching Elkhart's youth. So we are going to find new ways on how to reach Elkhart's youth. We are going to adapt to whatever the culture is, and to make sure that we are reaching Elkhart's youth. But the one thing that will never be different is that we will be sharing Jesus to those youth.
Will there be a Lifeline Fort Wayne and a Lifeline South Bend?
You know, I don't think so right now, but you never know what God has in plan for us. Mm-hmm.
I think the neat thing is our mission never changes, but our methods do. We've had people ask us to come to certain areas, and what we have said is, hey, we have housing, send someone in, they can take everything that we have and go anywhere they want.
You've had so many successful stories.
Mm-hmm.
Give me some of the stories of kids that have come up through Lifeline and where they are now as adults.
Yeah, so Darrell will be able to speak a lot into that, but I'll give you a student that right now, he graduated and is now actually working for us. His name is Elvis, and I met Elvis at Hawthorne Elementary. He was one of my first students that I had. And he has come through the program. He was one of our leaders in our high school program. And his senior year, he was really struggling that he was going to graduate because he couldn't come back to Lifeline. And he approached me one day and said, hey, what would be the possibilities of me being an intern? And we started having those conversations. And he is now working in our apparel shop, and he is learning a ton. We are pouring into him, but that's just one of the stories. You know,
I think that pouring into is those soft skills, showing up on time, learning how to work as a team, learning how to communicate, those kind of things. But another great thing is Tadriana, who has worked with us for a number of years, who Emily, my daughter, called me one summer and said, you need to get out here right away. A tragedy in the family. Mom's going to move. It's not going to be good for Tadriana. And Emily adopts her. And we're talking like 24 hours. Mom signs over guardianship to Emily. Emily's 26. She's 16. But again, my first call is Don Phillips, Basher Children's Home. How do we do this? How do we maneuver this? And he gives us all the paperwork. And Basher supports Emily financially as well. And now Tadriana plays an important role at Lifeline, is actually going to start back at college in January to be a social worker. So, you could sit here time and time again of young people from a very early age and seeing their incredible growth and the impact that Lifeline's had on them.
Thank you both for being here today and sharing some of your thoughts and your story with us, but also the way that you share your hearts with other people. Elkhart's a better place for it. So we always wrap up the podcast with a question of what gives you hope. And so I would ask both of you to respond to that.
Yeah, that's a great question. Every day, like I mentioned, I live in a miracle. And I see our employees' hearts change to love more, to be more patient. I see our kids' heart changing to trust us and them knowing that they are safe. I see families being impacted because the children go home and tell their parents about the Bible stories and the verses they're memorizing. And then the parents now I want to go to church. Every day I'm living in a miracle, and I'm seeing hearts transformed, whether it be our employees, whether it be kids, whether it be whole families.
Everything that David said, you know, and I said it with such a grateful heart because God could have chosen anyone to be at Lifeline, but fortunately he chose me. But I think what gives me hope is an incredibly young, talented staff. I've had other not-for-profit leaders say to me, Darrell, you've got the best staff in Elkhart County. And that gives me great hope for the future and continued growth. Very talented, very passionate for our kids.
This show is a production of the Community Foundation of Elkhart County. It is powered by equipment from Sweetwater and recorded at the Community Foundation's offices in Elkhart's River District. Editing is done by the award-winning communication students at Goshen College, home of one of the best college radio stations in the nation. Listen to Globe Radio at 91.1 FM. Music is provided by Sensational Sounds. Learn more about the Community Foundation of Elkhart County at inspiringgood.org. You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Thanks for listening. We hope you're inspired and inspire good in your community.